First question is, which habits and routines you developed through your life were essential to construct this musician and personal way that you have today?
I think that for me, the most important routine in my life is that I play scales when I start my practice. And for me, that's just because I want to feel connected to the instrument, and I want to be able to get the energy flowing to my fingers, especially my left hand, in a way that where I can be in control and sort of almost have a meditation at the beginning of my practice. So I would say that for me is very important. And then that once I've done that, I can feel that I have the ability to work and grow in my practice for the rest of the time that I'm practicing that day. I'd say is my biggest routine.
But there's something outside the music, like some habits or some routine that help to build this. Yeah, I mean, your life, your musical life, and your personal life. There's something outside the music.
Oh yes. Well, I think that I love exploring different people's work, and one of my favorite things to do is just go on YouTube and just listen for hours to what other people have done. So I think for me, it's like a matter of curiosity and just being interested in what you can learn from other people. So yeah, for me, that's number one.
Do you have any like pre-concert superstitions? I think people would love to know if you do.
No, I don't actually. I used to have a superstition, but it was a bad superstition, which was that I've been wearing glasses since I was 10 or so, and I remember before one performance, my glasses were very dirty, so I went to the bathroom to go wash them with soap, and then I had this big solo at the beginning of the piece that we were playing, and I missed a shift like right at the beginning. So I made that decision. I'm never going to wash my glasses before a performance again. So now I go on stage with like dirty glasses and I can't see anything. I think I got over it though eventually.
Yeah, I've heard some people like drinking like a glass of wine, or like I heard Hilary Hunt pushes the wall right before going on stage, and there's like Verbia Chamber Orchestra with like they like just yelling before performances. Like very interesting how people cope with that.
Yeah, I know, like Steven Israelis, he always drinks a cup of coffee exactly 30 minutes before he goes on stage.
Yeah, I mean, coffee is something that I really try to avoid because I think that I lost a little bit of this control, So it's
yeah, I know exactly. I would think the same thing, but apparently it works.
But for me, it's like I drink coffee every day. If I don't drink coffee like on the day of the performance, I just feel so horrible before I go on stage, like without any energy. So why not drink coffee? Like I'm just committed to my addiction. Every day in my life I'm gonna drink a cup of coffee.
Before the audition and stuff like that. I mean,
well, yeah, right before. Like, I mean, if I hadn't like, what Stumpf always told me is like, there's no excuse to ever sound bad. So like. Yeah, it's tough, but I take it too hard. That like if I play badly, it's not gonna be because of the coffee for sure. Like.
Okay, so we have like so the second question made by Wallison.
Did the number of concerts increase the way you expected after winning the Tchaikovsky?
Yes, I would say so, and I'm very lucky that I had a great. I was with a wonderful organization in the U.S. Called Young Concert Artists, and they provide management for sort of musicians at the beginning of their careers. And I was with them during the competition, and they helped me transition to another management, which was a smaller management that was a commercial manager, so they had more connections with more people in the industry. So yeah, I would say, I mean, I have a pretty exciting season planned for next year if things aren't canceled. But so yeah.
What's the reason for being a musician?
Well, that's a great question. It's something you have to ask yourself every day, right? For every time you sit at the cello, why? You know, I would say that you have to love it more than anything else, and you have to feel that it's what you were meant to do. That's how I feel about music and about art. It's just like it's something that just was like a magnet. It drew you to it. And well, for me, music is all about communication. So like I love what Yo-Yo Ma said. He said, the thing that I'm passionate about most is people, not music, but people. And I love people. So music is my way of connecting with them. Yeah, I would say.
Well, that's a great answer. So I have a next question. So, but first I need to explain something. Like I said, in Brazil, we just don't have cello competitions. So for us, if someone wins something that's just amazing, anyone, what for us is the biggest competition on the world. So one of the most asked questions on our Instagram was, do you have social life?
Oh, I hope so. I don't know. Maybe for other people, my social life is pretty, but I feel that I still have friends, and I of course at Juilliard, where I go to school, I always enjoyed, getting to know my wonderful colleagues like Guy and other people. So. Yeah, I would say so. I think it's very important, if you're going to be a musician, to always be interested in meeting new people, because you're always working with other people, conductors.
So
managers.
a question related to that is, I think people don't realize how much you practice in a complete inverse way. How much do you practice per day?
Well, I would say I spend probably at least 3 hours a day with the instrument. But then a lot of the time I'm practicing by listening to recordings of myself or other people, studying the score, thinking about the music more generally. I think that, yeah, if you want to improve or learn a piece as quickly as possible, you have to immerse yourself in it. So
yeah, because like what is amazing to me is like you have your Instagram that you post videos of yourself practicing, and it's very enlightening, because it just really looks like you're just trying stuff on the cello, and it doesn't matter if it sounds good at the time, but when you're in concert mode, man, it's just like nobody sees the whole process, and nobody understands that you don't need to practice 8 hours and playing everything perfectly, because then it's like if you have a really good day practicing, it's kind of boring, because then you kind of just nail everything and you're just satisfied or something. I mean, it never happens.
It's never happened to me.
Of course, like platonic level of, but it's very interesting. I don't think people like consciously realize that.
I want to make a related question. So, like I said, Cello Pauta is a project to try to spread this type of information. And new Instagram have this amazing project to really show the process to make your music. So what can I say about this importance to really show this another side of being a musician? Like not just the perfect everything in tune and perfect shifts. No. I mean, it really shows another side. So what can you tell about that?
Well, I think it's, I really wanted to do it for two reasons. One was just because I want to push myself to make sure I'm practicing every day during quarantine. And then the other is, of course, just to kind of, I thought people might be interested, what it's like when I practice. And I mean, the truth is that when I practice, I'm often very out of tune. And yeah, as you said, I'm just trying to figure out ways of doing things, trying to experiment. And actually, Tim Eddy, our teacher, he said something that just really influenced me. He said that everything that you come to when you practice always is a result of experimentation. So like, if you don't experiment, if you don't take risks in your practice, you're never going to achieve something else. But it's been really wonderful to see that people they've been commenting and saying like, wow, it's so nice that so good to see that you also feel like some days you're just not getting anything done, or that you sound terrible or something. And I was like, yeah, definitely, almost every day.
I mean, that's the real life. Sometimes I think that Instagram, we just see the perfect side of the life. So I think that's really important to show that it's not always like that.
One of the questions is how to reconcile personal life with the professional life of studies, competitions, and concerts. Like, it is similar to having a social life question.
I would say just continue to keep your friends close, and yeah, also I find it very important to value personal relationships and value the time that, because I think a great personal relationship, a great friendship is like it's kind of like working on the cello. You know, you have to put energy into it for it to be rewarding for you. So I would say, you know, just making the time to connect with people, and yeah.
One of the things that I learned from Juilliard is the importance of networking, and how much that is like, not like, I think that musicians started paying attention to that quite late into the 20th century, at least, like, or maybe actually no, it was like very high because they didn't have internet. But in the beginning of the 21st century, is probably like I wasn't aware of how much important that is until like I had a class on how much network is important. So next question is, what is the main change that occurred in your life after the competition?
I would say not so much changed, actually. I think that probably the biggest change is just that I'm getting more opportunities to perform, and slightly bigger opportunities, more opportunities to travel. But overall, I always like to say, I mean, I'm the same person, same cellist that I was before the competition. So not much changed.
That's good to hear. I always liked your playing anyway, so I hope it doesn't change.
Well,
or
thank you.
If it changes, it changes for even
For the
better.
better, hopefully.
Yeah.
How was the preparation? What was the emotion of participation, having won this incredible competition?
I have something else funny to share, which is that, of course, we were practicing. All of us were practicing very hard for the competition. But when we got there, we were all staying in the same hotel, and there was a big breakfast buffet every morning, and we would all kind of get together and eat together. And I remember I was talking with some people, and there was one guy who was like, he was saying, you know, man, before I came here, I was thinking that, you know, everyone would be so prepared, and I would be the one who was not prepared. But now I see that everyone is just as worried about me, and they're all going, oh shoot, you know, I scale in pezzo capriccioso or something. So I would say we were all kind of worried, and of course, it's so much repertoire. You know, we're just all trying to do our best, and as I mentioned before, it did get quite stressful toward the end. But once you're on stage, it's all about the love and enjoyment.
During the competition, how was your routine there? Because I mean, it was just finished one round, and you don't know if you pass or no, so you need to start to practice. So how was that?
Basically, I would get up, you know, go to the breakfast buffet, hang out with some people. I was staying in the room with my pianist, and he was in a slightly different situation than the cellists were, because he could only practice at the conservatory, which was about a 20-minute drive away from the hotel. So after breakfast, he would come back to the room and take a nap while I practiced. I would practice for like an hour and a half in the morning, and he would just take a nap. And then we'd probably go to get lunch somewhere. I might meet my family because they were there also. And then in the afternoon, I would probably go rehearse with my pianist at the conservatory, and then have dinner, and then practice some more in the evening. But overall, it was, you know, very sort of just practice, eat, practice, eat, practice.
The whole repertoire every day, or just try to make some variation about that?
During the competition, I was practicing only the repertoire for the next round. For example, the Rococo variations, I did not start practicing until I found out that I was in the finals. And that way I just could feel like I was clearer and I was more focused on what I was doing. I think some people might play different rounds, but for me, it's a little overwhelming to do that.
One last question about that, because I'm really curious about that, is how often do you play the whole program before the competition? I mean, it's like 2 hours, 2 hours and a half. So how often do you play that?
I would never like run through everything unless I was in a performance. And I did give 2 recitals, warm up recitals locally near where I live, right before I left to go to Russia. And those were extremely helpful because I was playing some of the pieces that I didn't know as well. So just to get the chance to perform them for the first time was absolutely important. And I think it would have been a very different feeling if I hadn't done those 2 concerts.
And then Kaique, he like on this note, like what is the relation that you have between cello and chess? Like how one helps the other or something like that. Are you still playing chess like competitively?
I don't play competitively anymore. I play on the internet though, and I don't know if there's so much of a relationship. I mean, I think that the one place where I can find similarity is chess is a lot about analysis and sort of trying to find the truth of a particular position. And I think that sometimes we need to think that way when we're looking at a piece of music, like trying to find the truth of a phrase, like what exactly is happening. Or similarly, if there's a passage where we need to find the best fingering, just kind of breaking it down and like having the analytical mind to figure out what works best as what's most efficient. I think that could be similar.
Mm-hmm. Wait, what's your rating now? Online.
On chess.com, it's like around 1900.
Okay, never mind. I was gonna tell we should play some, but I'm like not even 15. So
well, at 15, it's great. We should play still.
So we have like just 2 or 3 questions left. So the next one, Guilherme, is yours.
How did you deal with the cello frustrations, and how did you maintain a level of evolution and excellence? I mean, you're still young, but like, of course, the evolution for like probably past like 5 years. And what is the projection probably?
Yeah, I'm still trying to figure that out. It's such a process because every day, sometimes you just feel like you can't do it at all. And you come to the cello and you just feel like you're a beginner, and for me, I mean, I've had definitely periods that are worse than others, but for me, I think it's always just a matter of time. And I think sometimes, let's say you're working on a particular element of your playing, like you're trying to relax your right shoulder or something. You might just need time to figure out. You might need time to grow, to change physically, to just feel different things and change your approach. Some of these things are so fundamental to not only who we are as cellists and musicians, but just as physical human beings that they just take time to understand. And it's like you can't learn how to walk immediately. You have to trip and fall a few times, and it's just that getting into physical knowledge. It takes time.
Yeah. And on that note, have you ever considered stop playing cello?
I did actually when I was 15. I wanted to quit, and it was because I felt that just there was too much pressure for me to be, be a cellist, be a good cellist, and I felt that I couldn't handle it, so I really wanted to quit. But luckily, my family was very supportive, and my teacher Richard Aaron, he was like, you're gonna get through this, you know. So, but so I just, you know, I think everyone at some point who really devotes themselves to something, I don't know what your experiences are, but you kind of feel.
Oh yeah, I mean, I gave up cello when I was 10 because I didn't want to read music. I didn't want to learn how to read music. I only learned by ear, so I quit because of that. And then 2 years later, I came back, and then after that, also like there were many times that were just like, you know, like I love math, so like I might as well just like I almost did a minor in math in Indiana. But the thing is, like, one of the only good things that I'm good at is kind of good as like playing cello, so I might as well just stick to it for now. That was always my only reason. I mean, of course, like music, I know I love music and everything, but yeah, that's my experience, I think, of many cellists.
Well,
Yeah,
you're a wonderful cellist. You're a really wonderful cellist.
I always think about this relation between the pressure and the pleasure, but I mean this transformation, because I think that everyone has this time, principally now in lockdown and everything else, that we really need to think about why we're doing that. So I want to ask about this for you. You're in New York right now, right?
Actually, I'm with my family in Massachusetts, not far from Boston. Yeah, but yeah, I'm in the US.
And so how are you dealing with lockdown? Because I mean, it's a really, really hard time for us. Actually, 2-3 days ago, I was talking about that with basically everything in our class here, and everyone was just stressed and with this lack of motivation. So how are you dealing with that?
It's, you know, it's tough. I'm actually quite lucky because I have a performance on Saturday, which is a live stream. And so the past few weeks I've been practicing more and trying to prepare for that. But I'm a very goal oriented person. So for me, it's very important to have performances to work for. And, you know, of course, it's been difficult being inside and everything, and having a lot of time to reflect on, you know, like whether we can actually still make music without an audience. And it's a difficult question.
Yeah, no, totally. I think that without any goal right now, it's really hard to move on this time. Okay, so the last two questions I received made by Kaique.
Okay. How was your personal preparation for performing in public? Did you have a study for that? And did you make a specific psychological preparation for this competition?
I think that the preparation, the best preparation for competition is performing as much as possible. I've always believed that, like, it's kind of like Pokemon, you know, how in order for a Pokemon to level up, it has to battle, it has to gain EXP points, you know. So like every you know what I mean? Like
yeah, totally. I mean, it's an amazing analogy.
So like in order to get to level 100, you have to go through a lot of battles and face a lot of, so like for cellists, it's like you have to go through a lot of performances and play a lot of different pieces and face a lot of different audiences. And I think that if you just keep doing that, eventually you're going to feel more and more comfortable. So that would be my #1 recommendation.
Wallison, you know, is like almost a Jigglypuff.
Actually, around that, I had a theory that you can make any analogy about anything and it'll make sense if you're smart enough. But I really like the Pokemon one.
And I want to ask about, do you feel something different when you perform in a competition or in a restaurant, or I mean in different type of situation, but in a competition it's like really different for us. But how do you deal with that? Or could you be a little bit more specifically, how do you face a competition compared to another type of performance?
I try to think of them as the same thing. of course, you know, it can be a little difficult when, you know, you hear other people and you feel that you're competing with them. But I try to avoid listening to my competitors and just try to think about the audience and give them a special experience when they're there at the competition. And also just to see the jury as more audience members, you know, because I think that the people on the jury, the reason that they're there, this is another thing that Tim Eddy taught me when we were talking about the juries. He said, the reason we're all there is because we're first and foremost music lovers, and we appreciate great performances. So play for that side of us, not for the cello teacher side of us, you know. And I think that's important just to think of, you know, people like Misha Maisky, Schulz Mork. In the end, they're also just human beings, and they want to be moved and they want to enjoy a performance. So
Yeah, totally. And there's something that currently is really in a trend topic, I can say about it. It's about when you're in a competition, you should perform in a right way to the jury. You know, it can. There are some people that say you cannot be yourself in a competition. You know, so what do you think about that?
I think you have to always be yourself, and you have to kind of not be afraid what people will think. Because if you're not yourself, if you're not being authentic to who you are, then you're never going to be able to move people. And you know, some people, their authentic self is quite wild, so they don't tend to do well in competitions. But that's no problem at all. It just means that they have something special, you know, that just needs to be understood in a deeper way, you know. And so I would say that everyone should be themselves for sure and not think about the jury.
Yeah, I mean, I totally agree. So our last question.
Okay, this is our last question. Just a second. Okay. How to study the fast passages?
I actually, the way I love practicing fast passages is a technique of Richard Aaron's, which is if you have the separate stroke, when you practice it, you instead want to do staccato, like down bow and up bow staccato. And the philosophy behind that is that it's easier to go back to a stroke if you've already done something harder. So this down bow staccato is harder than normal spiccato. So if you practice with the staccato, then when you go to the spiccato, it will feel easy. It'll feel like an easy stroke. And so that's sort of my number one technique for, like, for example, the 7th variation of the Rococo variations. Just practice the whole thing with staccato. Also, you can do double note staccato. And then, of course, I also work a lot with the metronome when I'm doing fast passages to make sure that I have a strong sense of pulse. And usually I'll start at something like 40, and then I'll bring it up by 3 clicks each time. So like 40, 43, 46, 49, and that way I'll build it up during my practice. And if I reach a number like let's say like 72 or something, and I feel like it's too fast for me, I'll go back to 66, and then start over from there and build up again. So, yeah, that's my strategy.
I have one more question. What do you think about mental practice?
I think it can work if you do it correctly. And I have done some mental practice before. I've never actually done like a mental practice session that's like an hour or something. I don't even know how I would be, if I'd be able to survive that. Because it seems like
just on the key, no?
Yeah, right. But I think, I mean, it definitely has its place, and I think sometimes when we practice with our instrument, we get too involved in the physical and not enough in the mental, like actually being in control of what we're doing. So sometimes I just like to step back and think maybe about the fingering and just visualize what I'm doing, and that can be a big help.
Yeah, on the parenthesis on that is actually what you said is very important, that it has to be done in the right way, because I've experienced myself like being in a competition and like, you know, you try to mental practice on the way, like on the bus, on the way to the hall, and then all the mistakes you can also mentalize. So it's very easy to get caught up on the mistakes, and then you just develop bad habits just by thinking about it. So I completely agree that it has to be done in the right way to actually work.
Oh, well, I think that one last question. I don't know if someone have like a really last question, but now, I mean, you say that you're finished with competitions, everything else, but based on everything that we said before, so how are you choosing the repertoire that you're approaching the next year? And I mean, right now, you don't have like this type of pressure for competition, like we must play these and these. So how do you approach this repertoire that now are free to choose? I mean, free.
Yeah, of course. I'm trying to constantly be building recital programs that I think are interesting and that give audiences enough variety of music. One of my big ideas was I wanted to develop a cello recital program that was based on the history of virtuoso music. So that's something that I'm going to be playing next season, hopefully. I'll be going from all the way back from, I think, well, Dall'Abaco, who wrote these caprices, up to Kaya Sariaho, who wrote the Set Papillon piece, which is wonderful virtuosic harmonics. And of course, I'll do some Popper and Piatti and stuff, and all those people who are wonderful virtuosos.
Wait,
I would say just continuing. Yeah.
Have you played any Gabrielli? Because I think like that should be like one of the first solo pieces.
Yeah, I was going to. I've played the Gabrielli first sonata in G major, and I was going to program some of the Ricercare, but I felt that it didn't fit as well with the program as the Dall'Abaco. So yeah, but I would love to do those.
Yeah, I mean, it's really amazing to approach this type of music, and principally to give this chance to the public to see this development. So, I mean, it's really awesome. Okay, so I think that's it. Zlatomir, I'm really speechless to how can I be grateful for this, because it was really special for us. I think it will be really special to the Brazilian students, really special.
Well, thank you so much for really talking with me. This was really fun. I really appreciate you asking.